Sure, Vatia. My name is Casey Camp Hornick, my colonized name. Julie is my Ponca name. I'm a member of the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma, elder and drumkeeper for our Women's Society. I have the joke of telling everyone that I also am a graduate of MIT. I'm a matriarch who's been in matriarch and training for a long time. And I raise a beautiful family in the midst of crazy extractive industry destruction and genocide that goes on in our territory. We participated with this young man and his wonderful wife before they had children. And the journey continues. After we have a talk later, then we'll catch up a bit on the journey itself. Good to meet you all, and thank you all for being here. It's really an honor to be among you.
Yes, thank you very much. Jaden, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Jaden Foytlin. I'm from Southwest Louisiana, but I live in New Mexico currently. I'm the daughter of Shree Foytlin, and me and my mom have been experiencing effects from climate change and climate disaster since I was 6 years old with the BP oil spill. And I've basically grown up around activism. Again, my mother was an activist, and so I got into this really soon. But I take it very seriously because, again, living in Southwest Louisiana, well, I'm in Southwest Louisiana right now, and being here, I can still, to this day, see the effects of the flood of 2016 I have in my house, and I'm still trying to, work through all the floods I've been through, all the hurricanes that's come from fracking in the Gulf, or all this other stuff that, like the Bayou Bridge pipeline. I've just grown around a whole bunch of industrial, pollution all my life, being a 17-year-old now, sorry, I forgot. My birthday was recently, but being a 17-year-old having to live through having no fluorine because of the flood that happened, I've been stuck in an kind of system, and this type of system, and I've grown in this system, and I've been raised in this system, and which is why I'm an activist now, is because it's always been surrounding me, and which is why I'm speaking about it now, or speaking really heavy about it. I'm sorry, I'm kind of because I'm back in Louisiana, being in New Mexico for so long, I'm kind of getting reminders of all the traumatic events of the BP oil spill that happened and the flood of 2016 that went through my house. We had half a foot of water in my house, and we still have no floors. We recently got our walls back up, we fixed everything, but I still continue to live in this endless cycle of just climate disaster.
Thank you, Jaden. Thanks. Veronica? Hi.
Hi, bonjour. My name is Veronica Fuentes. I am based out of Amiskwaciuskaian, otherwise known as Edmonton, Alberta. My family comes from both El Salvador, Cuscatlan. My father was a communist in the 70s, I guess. Came to Canada, met my mother, an Anishinaabe from Yellowquill First Nation. So I'm both Salvadoran and Anishinaabe, but I'm not living in my territories. Where I live is known as tar sand affected community. Not so much community, but the whole region. I live in tar sands basically, and I organize the tar sands. I organize in the urban center closest to all that mess. But I'm a community organizer with Beaver Hills Warriors. I'm a facilitator with IP3. We do a lot of solidarity organizing, also just addressing a lot of barriers that, very special barriers that urban Indigenous people face. I guess that's it.
Thank you, Veronica. Hello, Judith. It's nice to see you again. Can you introduce yourself?
Hey, can you hear me? Cool. Yeah, hola. My name is Judith Nieto. I grew up in Houston, Texas, but I'm originally from Mexico. My family's from San Luis Potosí and Veracruz. So I am Afro-Mexicana and on the side of my father. But I grew up in the east end of Houston, which is completely surrounded by industry, chemical plants, metal crushing facilities, landfills, and the ship channel, which carries a lot of export and import. And there's high cases of diesel contamination due to a lot of the traffic that surrounds the community. I grew up in a small community called Manchester, which is sort of a reflection of what the tar sands communities look like at the exposure site. And it's one of the most contaminated communities in the country. My family still lives there. I am of migrant descent, so it seems like Creator calls me to live a migrant life. And so I've been traveling to Louisiana and Texas for a few years now, and I've been living in New Orleans for a little over a year now, working around the same issues. I am an interpreter, I'm a cultural organizer and artist, so I do and wear many hats and do many things. Right now, I am a co-founder of a language justice collective here in New Orleans, and also am part of the core leadership of Another Gulf is Possible, which is all women, brown women, Indigenous women led, which Cherie was one of the co-founders and got to work really closely with her in the years prior. So yeah, I am in New Orleans right now. It's been raining pretty bad, so if I'm in and out, I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep connection going, but the lightning is pretty bad here and can take out all of the power of whole neighborhoods. So good to see you all. Good to see you, Casey. Jaden, so good to see you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that you made it safe to Louisiana, and I don't know if I'll get to see you, but wish you well.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm Quana Chasing Horse. I'm 17. I live in Fairbanks, Alaska, and right now I'm just kind of enjoying the weather and trying to stay healthy and positive in this crisis. I think this film is going to be a good way for us to really connect and stuff, and learn more from each other. I am a part of the Gwich'in Youth Council that was recently put on last year. It's very new, still kind of putting it all together and getting used to each other. But when I joined the Youth Council, I got a lot of opportunities and a lot of, I learned a lot from a lot of people. I had a lot of people helping me throughout my life. I guess I could say I've had a lot of really strong women to raise me up. So, doing the work that I do, it's mostly just about, for me, it's mostly about like the future generations, me being able to like still go onto my lands when I grow up and take my kids hunting, and I kind of seeing my lands change over the years due to climate change and the oil industry, and how the oil industry is trying to drill in our sacred lands and fighting for that. That's what motivates me, because I don't want to see, all of that gone. There's a lot of love, sacredness, and peace that our sacred lands hold, and that's where we go to reconnect and to just kind of find ourselves. And I think that's a really big part of what I do, because for me, it's healing, it's health, and it's a big part of why our people are so focused on our sacred lands and our women, and how climate change, it's all interconnected. All of these issues are very interconnected. It's the how our people suffer from not being able to get the justice they need, not only for our people and our women, but our lands. There's a lot of taking and not enough love and effort putting into what we do. You know, still being 17 and being so young, I've done a lot, you know, just, I wouldn't call myself an activist. What I call myself is a protector of our lands and our people. I don't like to be labeled because I'm just doing what I can and doing my best to, you know, make sure that our future generations get to be able to live our ways of life without having to worry about any kind of threats, just like the oil industry and how the oil industry brings in harm to our Native women and how that all is interconnected within climate change. So yeah, that's what I've been fighting for. And I'm very glad that I got to be here with you guys and speak. I feel very honored to be able to share this with you guys. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And we're very glad to have you too. Yes. So, yes. So this event of tonight is about Indigenous youth voices. This is the reason why I would like to ask our elder, Casey Camp Hornick, that is as well one of the film protagonists, to take some time to share with us what she thinks about the importance of youth and their voices in the movement. And after that, maybe to give us a short introduction of the film. What is this film about? And then I guess that the best way to do is to just move forward with the screening of the film.
Thank you, Latia. That's a lot, and it means a great deal to me to get to share. Honestly, come on, I thought I was one of the youth, but since you want me to play elder, I guess I'll do that one. I'm very honored to be here among these young ones. You know, I know a few here and a few I don't know. But I'm a matriarch of a large family as well, where my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren are very much like these young ones. And they're raised with the value system that definitely we called activists during my youth. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, being part of the American Indian movement when it was beginning. My brother Carter Camp being one of the national leaders that formed 37 chapters here in Oklahoma, led the Trail of Broken Treaties. Three brothers took vital positions in the Wounded Knee takeover, they call it, but it was a civil war that the United States inflicted on Native people after it's a long story that goes with it, but my brothers Dwayne, Carter, and Craig were there for the duration. My brother Carter Camp was the only one who served prison time following that. And we followed a trail of at that time called civil rights, of uplifting the issues that we had to uplift during our youth. The assimilation, the forced removals, the people taking our children and putting them into white homes, forced sterilizations where our women didn't even know what the Indian Health Services were doing to them. The non-representation in these colonized schools, HUD housing. I could go on for a bit because those were the struggles when I was young. That transitioned into what is called environmentalism long before the word was well known. Because although we still call ourselves activists, we are also those protectors of our culture, those protectors of the 7 generations to come. So it's necessary, just as my mother and father raised me to be in this position right now, and their mother and father before them and before them and before them. My grandpa being 8 years old on our forced removal and walking that long. Those stories are fresh. They're still with us. Our DNA, our cellular memories call us to be warriors and protectors so that the generations to come. My oldest granddaughter will be having a new great-grandson for me in just a few weeks. And that baby has a right to breathe, to eat, and to drink. So as we flow through this moment, when there is all this disruption of our life, for these young people, this is their life. This is their norm. They have flown, or been flowing, I should say, through the disruption of their life from the time that they were young and had to go to colonized school. Am I right? In your teachings and your understandings come from a deeper spirituality and a history that is not just one generation or 3 generations of immigrants that have come here, but even Judith, who calls herself an immigrant, is deeply indigenous within her own territory and has now come into another territory with those same values. So when I see these youth, I see them being exactly what we prayed for and exactly what our ancestors prayed for, is a band of warrior women coming together even in cyberspace to be able to open up the way for those behind them to know who they are, know where they came from, understand the value of the family system that was set in place for us, understand the value of eating good food, the value of the sacredness of water and the sacredness of the breath, the winds that flow around us. So these to me are an answered prayer, these youth. And they are the standard bearers, these young women, these young men, for being future ancestors, for knowing where they're grounded and what their purpose is. So coming into this, I'm honored to be among them. And it also honors me to introduce this film to all of you who haven't seen it. And even those of us who have, it's always a new journey and revelation, always something small in there that Clement and Sophie put in there that I must have missed that. Now I'm going to listen to that one more time, that little grain of power and truth that's inside this. The prophecy of the coming together of the condor and the eagle and the way they fly, you know, it's a very powerful thing. We knew this was coming. We did not know that all of us would have the honor of living in prophecy as we are today. When the North Americas and the South Americas, this red quadrant of Mother Earth, unite in a manner that leads us back into wholeness and health and the value system that we just talked about, and helps each other to find the way forward through this, through the living jungles of the Amazon, through the turtle portion where my relative Judith comes from, all the way up to the Gwich'in area and beyond that into the Arctic Circle where our people still exist. And we need to teach, these young ones need to teach. What does that mean for the future of humankind? Do we, as survivors, still have a way to survive and to teach other humans how to live as if they are not separate from nature, but part of. Yeah. So the film is good. Enjoy.
But I just wanted to say, wow, that was a trip to memory lane. And, you know, it was a lot of things that happened during that time that I just feel like it was ages ago and lifetimes ago. But it was really beautiful to see all of those folks again. And I wish I could see them and spend real time with them again soon. And given everything that's happening, I don't know how that's going to work out. And so I'm really sorry that some of y'all weren't able to see it, but we're here to answer questions. And if y'all want to connect outside of this, we're all happy to do it. But yeah, I'm not sure which question we should go with first. I think a lot of the questions were, why isn't this working? When is this panel starting? And what can we do to fix this? I'm not seeing a lot of questions that are directly talking about the film or some of the experiences. But if y'all have some right now, I'm happy to answer them. Cool. I think there was one question from Janine about the takeaway that folks had and how we can take action. There was another question from Roxanne about our communities and if things have changed since our communities. I'm not sure, so much has changed and not all for the better. And I think that also answers the question of all of the other folks' community. I know that the folks on the Sarayaku community suffered a big devastation not too long ago because of the floods. And so all of the beautiful homes that you saw and the bridge that you saw is now underwater. I know there's been some efforts to help alleviate some of that. For my community in particular, for Manchester, you saw that Valero got the $17 million tax break, and from that they were able to expand. So the refinery since then has been under an expansion and have since then bought out more homes from the people that are closer to the refineries. My grandmother still lives there, and we're still fighting that fight of trying to get her relocated and so selling her property who was not in the selling area that Valero is trying to buy out. So, unfortunately, this fight is continuing, and because of recent pandemic issues, the community is, suffering a lot more from the contamination, and people continue to be at risk. But however, there's been a big activation of young people, and I think that's been the biggest win, is seeing how young people raised up, stood up, and took more control of their communities. There's a beautiful group of young people doing a lot of food sovereignty work, and people continue to monitor the air and quality of those communities. How long were y'all in South America? Well, Clem was there for the longest, so maybe Clem, you want to respond to that too. But we were there from 1 week to 2 weeks at a time, and I think maybe some folks spent more time there, on and off.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We were, so all in all together, we were on the road for almost 2 years with Sophie, my wife. So we were just in a very small van from northern Canada, traveling down Canada, the US, and to South America. So in South America, in the rainforest, we stayed, I think, about 9 months. So it took a while, like before the protagonist came with us, we just had to first scout the place and, build rapport and connections with the communities, with the local organizations, become friends, with the protagonist in South America, and understand, deeply what were the issues, the ongoing issues there, what kind of like connections to their lands, what kind of communities were operating in the area. So yeah, 9 months. It took us 9 months to do that, and I mean, organize everything, and then 3 months to have the protagonists come. So they flew separately, as you can see, from the US and Canada to the rainforest. So it's been quite an adventure. It's been quite an adventure. And yes, I mean, we can of course then speak about the film, but I'm not sure I got your name right, Kwana. Is that the right way to say it?
Yes, Kwana.
Kwana. Okay, wonderful. So yeah, hey, nice to see you and nice to meet you. Yeah, before going deeper into the film, maybe you want to say a few words and say where you are in the Q&A, and what did you see in the film? What's your feedback about it all, so that we can start from there.
I think it's extremely powerful. I really loved it. I learned a lot from it too, and I think it's very educational. I think a lot of youth would get a lot from this. So if a lot of youth have questions like, how can I get involved? Just keep staying informed and help inform other youth as well. Just keep up to date with these things. Just make sure the awareness is out there. This film really made me open my eyes to also other communities as well. And I think it's a really good way to be able to get all of our Indigenous communities that are greatly suffering from all these crises and all these issues. I think it's a really good way for us to come together, and we're all fighting a lot of the same things, a lot of the same exact issues, and a lot of the same hardships. And being a youth and seeing all that happen, and sometimes I feel helpless, like I can't do much because I'm not an adult yet. I do have my voice, but I always feel like I could do more. The thing is that all I feel like I can do is keep using my voice, and that's, to me, one of the strongest things that I have is my voice, and being able to empower other youth to use their voice. I see like some people ask, there's this question that I read. It says that as a young person in a privileged and sheltered community, to stop this, I'll be taking notes. So this question is pretty much asking, how can I, as a young person, like me as well, I feel privileged to be able to live in a home and sheltered and away from a lot of these crises, but also, a lot of young people don't know how to help or don't know how to use their voice. And I think it's just reaching out to other people, learning, and just sharing your experiences as well. Because I know a lot of people may not realize it, but a lot of people do see the changes with climate change and how the oil industry has greatly impacted the lands and people, and especially the animals. Up here in Alaska, we're also very close to Canada, so our people is very interconnected. Our issues are extremely interconnected, and I think that as a youth, just being able to keep your eyes open, very open-minded too, that helps a lot. Just really staying aware. So yeah. I come from the Hanguichin Nation and Lakota Sioux Nation. So, there's, I've been fighting up here in Alaska. I grew up more Alaska Native. We're fighting a pipeline also in the Arctic Refuge in our calving grounds of the caribou, the porcupine caribou herd. And it's a lot like how our Lakota Nation has been fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline, and along with many other Indigenous communities. And I think our youth really need help seeking like a platform for our voices. So I think that's also where we need to step up to as communities and people, is reaching out to the youth and helping them lift up their voice and giving them a platform so that they can put in their young, as a young person, to put in my insight, how I see things and how I'm growing up. And also you have to remind yourself that you have to think about the past and the history, and it's a cycle. It's definitely a cycle of hurting, a cycle of our people being abused, the land's being abused. So I think the more youth that know, the more people that know, the more awareness there is, the more change that will happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I wish Casey was on again. Just because she spoke at the beginning, of how proud she was to see us young women, lifting up those legacies and learning from elders like her, and continuing to uplift and follow in the footsteps of those legacy elders that have been a youth at one point and were the youth organizing for our generations, and I feel like we do a good job at being connected and true to that principle, but then also carry a responsibility. I consider myself super young. I am young, but I am not a youth anymore. But I do see all these young people who already have created platforms, and are continually creating platforms. Like, they are growing up in the age of social media. You are the author of your own story, and I feel like that carries a lot of responsibility too, to be able to uplift those other folks who might not have the same access or the same privilege of technology that we have, where we're at. And I don't know if I can speak to this, and Kwana, if you feel, or Jaden, if y'all feel like you can answer to this, but somebody asked the question of if we could share more about the prophecy of the condor and the eagle and what happens when they unify, because from what I hear, and Casey does a beautiful job of sharing this poetic justice, so to speak, and what it meant, what that prophecy truly means when people of the North and people of the South coming together, regardless of the struggle and our different landscapes, and how we're still communicating across country to help amplify and build up on the solidarity that they're trying to create, to share their stories and demand change and demand accountability from their governments. And that's what the prophecy really means. This is what's happening, what we're living now. But we're also seeing a lot of devastation that comes with that, and we're having to sort of shape. And I think somebody also asked that question of what can we do right now during COVID-19, and what opportunities do we have to recreate the different structures, right, that we are finding ourselves being crushed by, and the different systems that are continue to keep us oppressed and keep us in the way in impacted in the ways that we are. But we do have opportunities to build these new bridges to each other, these new ways of building solidarity and fighting for the same causes, right? Or for what our communities are needing in the moment. And actually putting that work into action, whatever it means, in the most basic way that you can think of. But yeah, I mean, if y'all want to share what that means to y'all, what it means for us coming together in this way. I've never met you, Kwana, but I feel like I'm already connected to you in some way. And, I feel like I can also share my story, and that will also help to figure out what it is that I need to do too, as a person being in the Gulf South, to show my solidarity with your people as well.
Yeah, well, I'm in a lawsuit right now, I'm in a lawsuit right now with Our Children's Trust. It's the Juliana versus U.S. Juliana versus the U.S. And it's basically 21 other youth across the United States suing for their own special reasons, but for one main reason, which is we need to be taken seriously. Youth need to be taken seriously, especially me and multiple other plaintiffs were Indigenous used to here. We have to live in this, we have to live in this place, and we have to grow up, and we have to grow up around industries like me. Like I had to grow up around the BP oil spill. My dad even was an oil worker before he got laid off when oil prices went down. Like I grew up in this crazy system, and that's why I became an activist, or why because I became in this lawsuit, is because I've been surrounded by this, and so many other plaintiffs have been surrounded by this, and I don't want to grow up and have my kids be surrounded by this, because I saw the effects. I've had my house been flooded. I had to leave my house because of what's been happening, and my work is just basically focusing on like kind of uplifting like other youth and telling them that their voice does have a matter. And no matter where you're from, I'm from a very conservative red state. Multiple people in my town do not like the work that I'm doing, but that does not stop me. And I want to like show other teenagers around my age, because I'm 17. I started my work when I was 11, I think, and I wanted to show like kids all around like the world that like your age does not discredit science. Like what you've gone through, what I've gone through, just because I'm 17 doesn't mean that it's invalid. And just because anybody of a younger age went through it does not mean it's invalid. If you experience this, you have a right to stick up for yourself, and you have a right to like use against it, even in your own town. If your town is conservative like I am, I just wanted to show like kids all around that no matter if your town doesn't like let you do that or doesn't like support you, I will. And I will still like, there's people all around the world, a whole bunch of organizations that will work for you, and everyone has their own voice.
Everyone, sorry I'm late, technical difficulties. My name is Hana Edenshaw. I am an Indigenous and environmental activist. I'm 16 years old, and I'm currently suing the Canadian government for the effects of climate change. It's really an honor to be here. I was watching the film, and it was just so incredibly powerful, and it was amazing to see the work of these people all across North and South America, and just the power we have together. And it like put into words like something I've felt. I think I cried like 2 or 3 times during it. It was so good. So thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. For me, I always have to take a step back and kind of do a reflection on all of the work I've done, and also realize like I've done this and this. What more can I do to make it bigger and better? You know, what more do I have? What more can I put into what I have done to make it a lot bigger? So with this crisis, I think, you know, a lot of people feel stuck, like they can't help in the way that they want. There's a lot of, you know, especially with social isolation and all of that, we're all in this together. But I think it's also kind of, you know, like I said, taking a step back and doing a reflection, going outside, maybe reconnecting with the lands and trying to connect with the lands, and, you know, really, how should I put this? Reaching out. That one, I mean, with this day and age, we have social media, we have, you know, our phones, we have our computers. But I think, you know, taking a step back from that, like, helped me in a way, just taking a step back and then coming back into it a lot stronger. Like, okay, this is what we can do. You know, especially with these webinars and these awesome Zoom calls, I think it's really good that we keep staying in contact with each other. Being up here in Alaska during this time, I was in Stevens Village, which is a very remote village along the Yukon River, which is the largest river in Alaska. I think it's the largest river in the US, actually. And when I was there, you know, I kind of disconnected from social media a bit. There was no internet connection. I was staying in a small cabin with my big family. That was really grounding for me, because not having all the distractions and all that really gave me time to like figure out, you know, what I want to do, how more, like, what can I do, you know, like, what more can I do? And that's always my thing, is like, what more can I do? And anytime I get an opportunity, I always want to like say that, hey, there's a lot of other youth out there, you know, there's a lot of other youth. I know there's these amazing ladies here with me around the same age as me. I'm 17, and I'm really happy that younger youth, younger people are getting a chance to speak up, because we do have a lot of knowledge, you know, in this day and age, and growing up with the sciences that we have in the classes and, you know, really learning. I think the youth voice is extremely important, because, you know, one of the projects that I worked on was with my younger sister, which is like a year younger than me. She's also an advocate for a lot of our Indigenous issues. We worked on this resolution, climate resolution. We brought it forth to our, we call it AFN, but it's the Alaska Federation of Natives. It's like a big, like, all of the Native people, all of the Indigenous people in Alaska, we come together with all these Native corporations, and we come together and we speak about these issues, or what can we do, you know, this and that. And we brought forth this resolution declaring that we needed to make better choices for our Alaska Native people. So it was demanding climate task force for our people, and a lot of my own people, which this is really sad, but our people really suffer a lot from the colonization with the oil industry. And I think that we need to start opening our arms up more to just reconnecting with the land, because after a while, all that oil is going to be gone, and we're going to be left with a destroyed planet. And I think, you know, really educating ourselves. I think that's the number one step we can do, is educating ourselves. You know, if you don't know much about a cause and you want to know more about it and you want to do something about it, look it up, really dig deep. And when you're in an uncomfortable position where someone tries to, you know, come up to you and you're trying to use your voice and they try to knock you down, you have to remember, you have to stay strong. You always have to stay strong, because in this day and age, it's really hard, you know, especially being a young person and people knocking you down like you don't know much. You know, it's like, we know a lot. It's just no one's really taken it seriously, especially from the Indigenous perspective. I think nowadays we're doing a lot better in including Indigenous voices, which is very good. But, you know, for years, the Indigenous voice has been, you know, discredited, not included, or just completely ignored or not taken seriously. So I feel very grateful to be here. And that film was extremely touching. I feel like it was a really good breaking point, you know, for Indigenous youth. I feel like I will love showing my friends this, because it will make them like feel empowered. That's what I felt watching the film, was I felt extremely empowered, especially during this crisis. Like, it's hard to reconnect. It's hard to, you know, smile a lot more, because, you know, right now in this crisis, a lot of people are feeling under the weather, you know, alone or isolated. And I think, you know, having this film and being able to present it to a lot of people, especially Indigenous people, it's a reminder that we're not losing ourselves in this crisis. You know, we can't lose ourselves. And I think it put a smile on my face, and I actually cried multiple times just thinking about the future generations and how this film is really going to impact the future generations, because it is very powerful. And I think that a lot of youth will just absolutely love this film. And especially in the future too, they're going to see this film and a lot of youth are going to think, wow, you know, these people came together and figured out, you know, all of these issues are so interconnected with all of our people. Like, it's crazy how much devastation there is to the lands and how there's not a lot done to protect the lands. And now all these people are coming together, you know, and I think when people start paying attention is when people are angry. And for me, I always think it's okay to get angry, but you just have to figure out a way to communicate it properly so people understand where you're coming from. So yeah, that's where I came from. I feel extremely honored to be able to use my voice through this webinar, and I feel extremely thankful that you guys included me in this. And just watching that film, I feel very extremely blessed to be able to watch that film. It was really good.
Thank you. Thank you for your beautiful words. I appreciate that. Thank you. Hey, Hannah. Yes, of course, we'll be speaking about COVID-19 and how we can keep working through this mess. And we have great questions here. But first, maybe, Hannah, you can tell us a bit more about your work. Someone is asking to have more details about the lawsuit against the government in Canada. Can you tell us more about that? We don't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Absolutely. I've been wondering how to continue activism during this period as well. It's really, really difficult. It's always hard to fight for your future because you have to like deal with your past first and like fight for your present if need be. That's why I think youth need a lot of support in order to have that voice for themselves. Currently, I'm suing the Canadian government with 14 other Canadian youth. I think 9 of them are Indigenous, and from 9 provinces and 1 territory. We are suing the Canadian government for our right to a secure future to life and for public trust rights. And we launched the lawsuit in October this year. We launched it in Vancouver. We got to speak alongside Greta Thunberg and David Suzuki, which was amazing. We've been that's been a lot of my activism at the moment, gathering evidence for the court case and supporting the lawyers in any way we can. We have a team of amazing lawyers working to help us with this lawsuit. There's similar lawsuits from youth all over the world. In America, the case has been going on for 8 years. I think one passed in the Netherlands and Colombia. So that's really amazing. If we win the lawsuit, we're asking that the government create and implement a climate, science-based climate action plan, and so then they would be legally responsible to the youth and to our environment. So I have really big hopes for our lawsuit. However, it's going to be a long road ahead. As we know, the US one has been going on for 8 years. And so there's a little bit of an uncertainty as to how long our lawsuit will go. But we have a team of amazing youth and amazing lawyers working and fighting for it. So I have a lot of hope in that respect. I feel working with them has really helped me have something to do during this crisis, because I know sometimes it feels like there's not so much you could do. I know right before the pandemic, I was doing a lot of activism and land defense with youth and with people. I slept outside the legislature I slept outside the Victoria legislature for nights, occupying in order to stand with the Wet'suwet'en. And we had such an amazing community built from love and Indigenous support out there, and like internationality with so many Indigenous nations in their support, and that feeling of love and community was something so incredible. And to know it was created from youth my age was like an experience I never had, kind of like growing up in Haida Gwaii. And before then I was like young and I would take part of activism work, but this felt like something like a community we created with youth at the forefront, which was so amazing. And it's been really hard to leave that, like, and to leave that amount of activism and to come back home and feel like you can't do much. But I do know there's a lot of things stopping people with COVID, and like, it's not bad, it's not wrong to put your health first and to put your mental health first, because I know it's a super like overwhelming time for everyone. And so like, it's okay to take a little break, because there's so many strong Indigenous youth and so many people who will keep fighting, that we can't all be fighting all the time. We can't all put our all into it all the time. And you know, this is a good time to like develop those communities and those support systems where you don't have to put your 100% in all the time, because that could be really exhausting. Just from like being at the legislature, one of my classmates got arrested, and there's about I'm from a school of 200 students, and at the most we had about 70 of them at the legislature. And I know it was so much easier when we had the big groups than when there's 20 people and the police are like circling constantly, and it can be really scary. So what I learned from that was I learned a lot from that. I learned that you need like a lot of people, and that makes everything so much easier, even if it feels like something so personal for you and that you can do everything. Like, no one should have to like sleep outside 6 nights in a row and everything. And I think now is a good time to find that help and to find people who could be with you and do your work with you, because that makes your community and your message so much stronger. It also taught me how to like lead a movement, because the youth leading that movement came out of it from such a place of love and respect constantly, and just learning how to amplify that message and to be like an environmentalist and an Indigenous advocate, and to call for land back and call to fix injustice from such a place of love and a place of fighting for the future of everyone is so incredible. I have a Indigenous friend who was out at the legislature with me, and her father worked with the oil company, and it changed her life for the better. It got her dad, when he got the job, she got a whole bunch more opportunities. She got her own room for the first time, and so she was really conflicted and saw how like oil companies really helped her life, but at the same time it was a bad thing. And so just experiences like that taught me like to fight it, but to always fight with respect. And I feel it's so much harder now that we're all quarantined and social distanced, to be able to learn those lessons and have those experiences. But it is a good time to kind of like stock up for later and do what you can in quieter ways or different ways. I've been focusing a lot on learning my language. I'm in a college course for it and have been speaking with elders, which I think has taught me so much. So like learning experiences like that, talking with elders online, of course, are so valuable. And I feel now is the perfect time to prioritize that kind of thing.
We basically started our journey of filming the film in Texas, right? So we spent lots of time in Houston. We sticked around. We got involved into your community organizing work, and we learned so much from you, Judith, because you grew up and lived in this community from East Houston, which is Manchester. And what I really learned from you, which is so critical, but I think it really drives our work and probably until I die, which is that we cannot imagine a progressist and positive social movement if it is not led by the impacted communities that are given the tools to organize themselves, to speak them for themselves and by themselves. And that's what this film, intends to do. We are not impacted communities, but we don't use voiceover. We just let the protagonists speak for themselves. And I think that's critical. So maybe can you help us better understand, because you have been a youth organizer your whole life. So I would like to know how you see youth community organizing exist and strive in this time of COVID-19. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I learned community organizing through my grandmother, through our matriarch societies. Women lead our families, they take care of our families, they make major decisions. And so I think that was my first lesson in community organizing and taking care of family and taking care of youth, bringing up the youth and always carrying this responsibility to act as if I'm being watched by them, So if I'm doing something that's going to potentially hurt my community, I need to check in with myself. So, the lessons that I learned in not only growing up in a community like Manchester, but growing up with a family like mine was that we're in it for the long haul. We're trying to build a good, strong family base and a foundation. And I think that what we need to learn right now or really pay attention is the ways that we build with our communities and the ways that we engage and show up for them. I know right now, we are having to be socially distant and not be in each other's environment and spaces, and being very mindful of who we engage with physically, and coming into spaces where there's elderly people and people who are who could get really sick. But we're also at a good time to reflect, like some of the youth mentioned that right now they're taking time to learn their language, to, sit with their culture and sit with their elders and just talk to them. And I think, that's essential for us. And because of needing to go to work, because of capitalism and what it teaches us and how we need to engage with it, we forget those things. And slowly we start even forgetting our culture and our traditions and the way that we were meant to be brought up and being in harmony with our natural world. And I think it's a good time to sit and reflect on that and sit on the ways that we play a big role in the healing of our environments, and our healing of our bodies, and the way that we engage with medicines and reconnect to our traditions, reconnect to our cultures, reconnect to the ways that we saw abundance in our ecosystems, and not just be exploitative, of people, of money, of resources. And that's the major lesson that I can share right now, because that's what I'm hungry for still, what I'm trying to heal from my relationship to a contaminated environment, where I loved being with my friends and my family and my community, but also was constantly sick and was not at peace with the air that I was breathing. And so when I went to the Amazon, when I spent time with the youth there and heard the ways that they're growing up in their environment, I cried. It was a deep hurt that I felt in my soul, that I had been stripped away from my culture, from the land that my mom, my grandmother, got to witness and got to grow up in. And now, I'm having to heal that relationship, and I am healing. I'm in a healing journey right now, and I think my healing journey started when I went there and was like, wow, this is the way we're meant to breathe. This is the way we're meant to live. And this is the ways that we can honor and respect our Mother Earth, you know, and fight for her and speak for her, because her voice has been shut, you know, and we are her voice. She's speaking through us in the ways that, you know, we're honoring her. Like, these young people are filing a lawsuit against their governments, how they're organizing themselves and relearning and re-engaging with their cultures. That's healing. That's for healing. And I think that's what COVID-19 is teaching us too. You know, it's our time to heal, and it's our time to heal our relationship to our mother and to ourselves, you know, and how we're going to carry these bodies and how we're going to use these bodies to heal her. And just shift that, you know, make a huge transition and shift our mentality around how capitalism serves us and doesn't serve us, you know, and reconstruct some of these systems, reconstruct the way that we grow our food, the way we share those resources with each other, aside from money, aside from all of those things, you know, and technology can serve a big role in that. It doesn't have to be destructive. So, you know, I think that we continue to engage and have these conversations and hold space to have these conversations and remove the outside distractions. I think that's also how we can build a really strong movement too with each other, and build an intergenerational movement, you know, continuing that legacy, because that doesn't come from us. That comes from all of the youth of the past, you know, always wanting and needing guidance from our elders, and our babies and all of the other folks in between, like myself. You know, I look young, but I'm not super young anymore. My 20s are leaving me, and I'm here, you know, trying to also learn the ways of being an elder someday, you know. And so I'm so grateful to be an honor to be here with you all too. You young people are not afraid to speak and not afraid to do what you have to do for your communities. And I sure as hell was so scared doing the things that I was doing, and even using my voice in the way that I was taught to do. But I'm a little firecracker, so I like getting mad once in a while and figuring out how to do it healthily, you know, and not just being angry all the time. But that's a long time journey. So thank you all for being here and also sharing your stories and all of your amazing work.
Thanks again for your awesome words, as always. Thank you, Judith. Hello, Julia. Who are you?
I'm good. How are you, Clément?
I am good. Thank you. Yes, I mean, the whole event started with Julia. So maybe can you tell us a bit more about how you got in touch with me, and what we have been working on together, and maybe a bit more as well about your work on Haile Dagwai and as a youth organizer in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. So a bit about me. First of all, I'm so humbled by all the words that were just shared by Hannah, Judith, and Kuana and Jaden before. So much wisdom in the room, as someone said. So I partially grew up on Haile Dagwai as a settler, and I've come back after finishing university, and continually learning more and more about how to live on this land respectfully and responsibly. And I'm so grateful to call it home. And I came of age, or became aware of, oh, I can actually make change in this world, or have a little bit of agency. I'm not just some shy kid who needs to do the expected thing. That happened for me in second year university, when I started getting involved in democratic justice and food justice movements and fossil fuel divestment campaigns. So that's led me on a path of climate justice advocacy and connecting with youth on Haile Dagwai, which is my core drive now, is to empower voices of Indigenous youth on Haile Dagwai and really help them connect to resources, or realize their gifts and abilities, and spread their talents with the world. So I reached out to Clément a few weeks ago because COVID started, and we wanted to continue building capacity. Hannah, you mentioned building capacity during this time, which I think is spot on. Like, this is a time where we can really reflect, come into ourselves, and take time to think about how we're going to maintain our capacity as change makers over the long haul. And that's something you said you did too. I just took a bunch of notes because everything you said was so good. But yeah, this is a really, really long term, this is a lifelong journey and effort, right? Is to be in this movement of transformative justice, really. And so this idea of having webinars and using online platforms for sharing these kinds of messages was the intention behind this event. So, and since touching base with Clément, we've kind of reached out to other groups, and I've got to know a few different amazing folks from those groups. So it's been a great time. But I also just want to say one other thing about the film and what I think it brings up for me. I think it reminds me how social movements are built and strengthened, and it's really through relationships. Like, it's not necessarily through, oh, we have the most funding or we have the most organized meetings or whatever. It's through the quality of the in-person relationships that we build, and the solidarity that we build between groups that aren't normally building solidarity with each other, because there's so many forces trying to drive us apart all the time based on our arbitrary groupings. So that's really powerful for me to see all of you speak about your community work and clearly see the value that, that relationships and that love and building genuine strength for each other has in your work. So yeah, I'll pass it back to the others. I'm just cognizant of time, so I'm sure we'll wrap up in the next few minutes so people can get on with their nights. But yeah, Clément, back to you.
And every event deals opportunity to bring different groups together and to fundraise for specific issues and communities. So that's the beginning. We are just getting started. So it takes time, to take off. But the goal is to really organize larger screenings with 5,000 people, etc.
Brian had a good recommended question. Maybe final thoughts from the panelists. What would you like us? A little nugget of wisdom or a nugget for us to leave with. Maybe we can start just counterclockwise with Kiwana.
Sorry, I always forget. Growing up, my mom has always told me, and my grandma, growing up, especially living out on the lands, was what I always carried around, and especially for young youth, is remember who you are and where you come from, always, and never be ashamed of that. Embrace it. And I think a lot of youth are starting to really embrace themselves, I think that's really powerful, especially for, youth my age and even younger. Just never forget who you are or where you come from. Never be ashamed of who you are. Keep fighting too. Use your voice. Don't stop.
Yeah, I guess I would just, share the same thing that Kwana, or echo what she said of honoring our elders, right? And never forgetting where we come from. An elder once told me that, which an elder told him when he was a youth. And that was the same thing, is never forget where you come from. Never forget who made it possible for you to be where you are. That be your parents, your mentors, your elders. And then always give back what's been given to you, pass it on, pass on that knowledge, don't sit on it. And keep engaging in the ways that you do, and keep growing, and just, keep going with the flows of nature and act accordingly. Right now we're finding ourselves in COVID-19 and we're having to figure out what that means for our communities and ourselves and our families. So just be conscious, right? Be open.
Well,
Gotcha.
I think for those of us who didn't grow up in in circumstances where we were really taught to listen, we were more subconsciously and explicitly taught to go out and grab it and you can do it and the world's your oyster. I think now is a really good chance for us to learn to practice how to reflect and how to be introspective and not be, pummeled with guilt and paralysis and, oh, maybe I shouldn't do anything because I'm, but really taking the time to educate ourselves on whose land we're on and on the histories and dynamics and cultures that we're living in and that we're engaging in. And practice listening. Yeah, listening to the people around us who have wisdom and listening to the land. I think that's what I'm going to do more of now.
Listening deeply is very, very difficult for us all, in this time of COVID-19, with this isolation taking place, it is maybe time just to, listen to the silence, to just like take a seat and just listen to yourself breathe and reclaim your native land within, You don't have to be indigenous to rediscover the fact that you're so conditioned. Conditioning goes a long way, and we are so far from being free human beings, whoever we are, whether we are the oppressor, the oppressed, whether we come from the global north, the global south, there's a deep need to do the work and let it go, And when we take a seat, all those tensions will accumulate, this aggressivity, Judith said it beautifully, this anger we carry within, frustration, desire. Yeah, well, I don't know how to do it, but we have to let it go. So maybe we just take a seat and breathe and listen to our silence, And maybe we are going to hear some intuitive nuggets of wisdom that then we can share collectively. And maybe this is the collective movement we need, And that's why indigenous spirituality is so powerful, because it comes from this fine merging oneself into the natural world, how we dissolve our ego into listening to how interconnected things are. That's it. And thank you for the audience. You've been great sticking with us until the end. And for me, it's 5:20 in the AM, so I think it's time to go back to bed.
Thanks for hosting, Clement.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again, Julia, for your great work.
Everyone, have beautiful nights or mornings wherever you are.
Ciao.
Y'all stay safe.
Bye.
Be well.